Forsaken and doomed to die alone on a barren rock, Deneb starved in the cracked hull of her ancient starship and waited for oblivion until 3 strange aliens arrived from parts unknown and offered salvation when all else was lost. Deneb's crashed ship, the Tachyon Flare, lay half-buried in a dune of orange sand, bent and broken beyond any hope of repair. The durasteel hull that had carried her across countless light-years now served as a sweltering metal coffin, sealing Deneb's fate on this desolate world devoid of all but the most primitive life forms. Twisted scraps of titanium and plastisteel littered the crash site, marking the premature grave of her once proud starship. The airlock door hung crooked on a single hinge, its hydraulics severed by the devastating impact that had left Deneb stranded. Inside the wreckage, Deneb huddled in the ruined cockpit, her clothes hanging loose on her emaciated frame. The life support systems had long since failed, leaving her to survive on a dwindling supply of emergency rations and recycled water. As a long-lived Arcturian, her body was hardier than most, able to endure the soul-crushing isolation and hardship that would have destroyed a lesser being. But even Deneb's resilient spirit was beginning to falter as the long months dragged on with no sign of rescue. Each day Deneb embarked on a grueling trek across the alien landscape, her once vibrant turquoise skin now dull and dry from exposure to the relentless sun. She scavenged for meager scraps of food and sipped precious drops of moisture from the rare, brackish pools that dotted the barren terrain. At night, she huddled in the crumpled remains of her ship, staring up at the unfamiliar constellations through a shattered viewing port and wondering if anyone even knew she was missing. As the weeks turned into months, Deneb's hope dwindled to a flickering ember. She began to accept the grim reality that she would likely perish alone on this forsaken rock, with nothing to mark her passing but the rusting husk of her once proud ship. The isolation gnawed at her mind, eroding her sanity like the ceaseless winds that sculpted the desolate dunes outside. But on that fateful day, as Deneb trudged back towards her ship with a meager handful of bitter roots to sustain her, she saw it. A brilliant streak of fire etching a searing path across the cloudless violet sky. A ship piercing the atmosphere like a flaming arrow and coming down fast somewhere beyond the rocky ridge to the north. Deneb stood frozen for a long moment, scarcely daring to breathe. A ship meant the possibility of rescue, of salvation from this nightmare of solitude and slow starvation, but it also meant danger, the possibility of encountering unknown aliens with unknown intentions. For all Deneb knew, they could be hostile scavengers or slave traders, come to strip her wrecked ship for parts and sell her off to the highest bidder. But even that grim prospect was preferable to the alternative of remaining here, slowly wasting away in the rotting carcass of her once proud starship until death finally claimed her. And so, with a surge of desperate hope and raw determination, Deneb turned and ran towards her crash site as fast as her atrophied muscles would carry her. Reaching the twisted wreckage, Deneb clambered inside and activated the ship's emergency distress beacon with trembling fingers, silently praying to gods she had long since stopped believing in that the signal would reach her would-be rescuers. Then, heart pounding in her ears, she emerged from the wreckage to wait, watching the northern horizon for any sign of the mysterious ship and its crew. Minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness, until at last, Deneb saw movement in the distance. 3 figures, clad in form-fitting spacesuits of an unfamiliar design, crested the rocky ridge and began picking their way down the steep slope towards her crash site. As they drew closer, Deneb saw with a shock that their proportions and gait marked them unmistakably as humans. Humans. Deneb's knowledge of the species was limited, gleaned from second-hand tales and extranet articles. She knew they were a young race, having achieved interstellar travel only a few centuries ago. Compared to the ancient and established races that dominated the galactic stage, humans were seen as primitive upstarts, their rapid advancement and aggressive expansion viewed with suspicion and disdain by many. But here they were, 3 human astronauts striding purposefully towards Deneb's wrecked ship, the first sentient beings she had laid eyes on in over a year. The leader paused at the edge of the debris field, his mirrored helmet turning as he surveyed the scene. Then, with a brief gesture to his companions, he started forward again, boots crunching on scattered shards of metal and plastic as he approached Deneb's position. Deneb felt her heart hammering against her ribcage as the humans drew near. These aliens were complete unknowns, their technology and culture totally foreign to her. Would they help her? Enslave her? Simply leave her to rot? There was no way to know, and Deneb suddenly found herself second-guessing her decision to activate the distress beacon. But it was too late for regrets now. The humans had come for her, and whether they proved to be saviors or captors, Deneb's fate now lay squarely in their hands. She could only hope that whatever strange code of ethics or morality governed these alien beings, it would compel them to show a stranded, starving Arcturian female more mercy than the callous indifference of the cosmos had thus far seen fit to grant her. So, steeling herself, Deneb stepped forward to meet the approaching humans. She raised a skeletal hand in greeting, her cracked lips parting in an attempt at a smile that felt unnatural after so long alone. The lead human halted an arm's length away, his mirrored visor obscuring any hint of expression. A strange weapon was slung across his back, all sleek lines and dull metal, like nothing Deneb had ever seen. The human regarded Deneb for a long moment, his body language unreadable. Then he reached up and released the catch on his helmet, lifting it away to reveal a face that was at once strikingly alien and yet hauntingly familiar. Pale skin, high cheekbones, a nose that was little more than 2 vertical slits above a thin, hard mouth. Glittering, deep-set eyes regarded her from beneath heavy brows, their irises a piercing shade of blue seldom seen among Arcturian kind. When the human spoke, it was in a language Deneb's translator implant struggled to decipher, a guttural tongue full of harsher consonants and shorter vowels than the flowing melodic language of her own people. "I'm Captain Ezra Roche of the Earth ship Dauntless," the human said. "We picked up your distress beacon. What's your name? What happened?" Deneb swallowed hard, her throat clicking with thirst and disuse. "I am Deneb, of the Arcturian starship Tachyon Flare," she said, the galactic common words feeling thick and clumsy on her tongue after so long without use. "My ship crashed here over a year ago. I've been stranded alone with no way to call for help until now." Captain Roche nodded slowly, his unblinking stare making Deneb feel like one of the small furry creatures she sometimes glimpsed scurrying between the dunes at night. "Well, Deneb, you're in luck. Helping people is what we do. Let's get you back to the Dauntless, and we can figure out where to go from there." He turned to bark an order at one of his companions in that guttural human language, then faced Deneb again, a smile softening the hard planes of his pale face. "Looks like we got here just in time," he said, holding out a gloved hand. "Come on, let's get you out of here." Deneb hesitated only a moment before reaching out to take the proffered hand. The human's grip was strong, his skin warm even through the thin material of his glove. With that touch, that simple act of connection, after so many long months of aching solitude, something deep within Deneb's chest seemed to crack and give way. A small, choked sob escaped her before she could stop it, tears blurring her vision as the human led her away from the broken remains of her old life and towards the strange angular silhouette of salvation. She didn't know what the future held, whether these mysterious humans would prove to be true saviors or something else entirely, but in that moment, feeling the strength and surety of Captain Roche's hand in hers and the blessed relief of no longer being alone, Deneb felt something that had been absent for far too long: hope. Hope for rescue, for survival, for a chance to reclaim some semblance of the life she had lost when her ship crashed on this forgotten world. It was a fragile, tentative thing, that hope, born of desperation and the innate need of all living creatures to cling to even the slimmest chance of salvation in the face of oblivion. But it was there, a tiny flame rekindled in the depths of Deneb's battered soul, and for now, that was enough. The journey ahead would be long and hard, full of unknowns and the ever-present spectre of danger. But Deneb was no longer facing it alone. She had found new allies, however strange and alien they might be, and in the vastness of space, with all the cold and uncaring emptiness between the stars, that meant everything. So with a deep breath and a final glance back at the wreckage that had been her entire world for so long, Deneb followed Captain Roche and his crew into the unknown, ready to face whatever fate had in store. For she was lost no longer, and whatever the future held, she would meet it head-on with the strength of newfound hope and the knowledge that, no matter how dark the night, dawn might yet still come. As the humans drew closer to the downed Arcturian ship, their steps slowed, a mix of caution and curiosity evident in their body language. Deneb, for her part, stood her ground, despite the fear coursing through her veins. She had come too far, endured too much to flee now in the face of potential salvation. The leader of the human group, a tall man with a commanding presence that seemed to fill the space around him, raised his hand in a gesture that Deneb recognized as a universal sign of peaceful greeting. He spoke into a small device on his wrist, his words translated into the melodic tones of galactic common a moment later. "Greetings," the human said, his voice deep and resonant. "I am Captain Nicholas Jackson of the United Earth ship Endeavour. We received your distress signal. Do you require assistance?" The words hit Deneb like a physical blow, the sheer relief of hearing another sentient being address her, after so long threatening to bring her to her knees. She swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that suddenly blurred her vision. "Yes," she managed, her voice cracking with emotion. "Please, I've been stranded here for so long. My ship crashed and I have no way to leave. I beg of you, help me." Captain Jackson nodded, his expression solemn but kind. "We will do everything in our power to assist you," he promised. "My crew and I are here to help." True to his word, the humans wasted no time in setting up a temporary shelter for Deneb, providing her with food, water, and medical attention. As she slowly regained her strength, the captain and his crew worked tirelessly to assess the damage to her ship and begin the long process of repairs. The narrator, watching from afar, took this opportunity to provide some background on the Endeavour and her crew. The ship, he explained, was on a long-range exploration mission, seeking out new worlds and resources for the people of Earth. Her crew was composed of individuals from all corners of the planet, each bringing their own unique skills and perspectives to the mission. As Deneb recovered and began to interact more with her rescuers, she found herself struck by their kindness and generosity. Growing up, she had heard stories of humanity's aggressive expansion and primitive ways, but the reality she encountered was far different. These humans were compassionate and technologically advanced, their actions guided by a deep sense of empathy and a desire to help those in need. The narrator noted that this was a common misconception among many galactic species, who often underestimated humanity's rapid progress and adaptability. It was a mistake, he mused, that had cost more than one civilization dearly in the past. Over the next few days, as the humans worked to repair her ship, Deneb found herself spending more and more time with Captain Jackson and his crew. They were endlessly curious about her and her people, eager to learn all they could about Arcturian culture and technology. In turn, Deneb began to open up, sharing stories of her life and her journey that had brought her to this desolate world. But even as the repairs neared completion and the prospect of returning home began to feel like a reality, a new complication arose. The ship's long-range sensors, the narrator explained, had detected an incoming vessel moving fast and on a direct course for their location. The energy signature was unmistakably Arcturian, but the ship was not responding to any attempts at hailing or identification. Captain Jackson and his crew were immediately on high alert, realizing that they may have stumbled into a far more complex and potentially dangerous situation than they had initially realized. The air was thick with tension as the humans and their Arcturian guest watched the sensors, waiting for the unknown ship to close in, each lost in their own thoughts and fears about what this new development could mean. The narrator let the tense moment hang, the uncertainty and potential danger looming over the small group like a threatening storm cloud. The narrator recounts how Captain Jackson wasted no time springing into action as the unknown Arcturian vessel rapidly closed in on their position. He called out orders to his crew to take up defensive positions around Deneb's damaged ship, his voice calm but insistent. Commander Lee, his first officer and trusted right hand, worked diligently to open a communications channel with the intruders, her fingers flying over the console as she attempted to hail them. Deneb, still weak from her ordeal but now standing on the bridge of the Endeavour, gripped the back of a nearby chair as she watched the situation unfold. She leaned in close to Captain Jackson, her voice low and urgent as she shared her suspicions. "Captain, I fear that ship may belong to a rival faction, one that has been at war with my people for generations. If they tracked my distress signal—" The narrator notes the way Deneb's words trailed off, her unspoken fears hanging in the air. Captain Jackson met her gaze, his eyes filled with understanding and resolve. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his voice firm as he addressed his crew. "Prepare for a potential confrontation. We don't know their intentions, but we will not allow any harm to come to Deneb." As the Arcturian vessel came into visual range, the narrator describes the stunned reactions of the Endeavour's crew. The alien ship dwarfed their own, its hull bristling with advanced weaponry, and its very design radiating an aura of power and aggression. While humanity had made great strides in the centuries since they first ventured into the stars, the narrator explains, they were still relative newcomers on the galactic stage. Many of the older, more established species like the Arcturians possessed technology and resources that far outstripped our own. The bridge of the Endeavour suddenly came alive with a harsh crackling transmission from the Arcturian ship. A voice, cold and imperious, filled the air, demanding that the humans surrender Deneb immediately. Captain Jackson stepped forward, his shoulders squared and his voice unwavering as he responded. "This is Captain Nicholas Jackson of the United Earth ship Endeavour. Deneb is under our protection. Any attempt to harm her will be met with force." The Arcturian commander's response was swift and scathing, his words dripping with contempt. "You dare to interfere in matters that do not concern you, human? Your species is primitive, inferior. You have no authority here. Hand over the traitor, or face the consequences." The tension on the bridge was palpable as the crew looked to their captain ready to follow his lead. But before Captain Jackson could respond, Deneb herself stepped forward, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination that belied her weakened state. "Commander Zorax," she began, addressing the Arcturian directly, "I am no traitor. I am Deneb, a high-ranking diplomat tasked with negotiating an end to this senseless conflict. But when I discovered the truth, that you and your faction have been working to undermine the peace process for your own gain, you sabotaged my ship, leaving me for dead." The Arcturian commander spluttered angrily, caught off guard by Deneb's accusations. "Lies," he roared. "You will pay for your treachery. Surrender now, or we will take you by force." But Captain Jackson stood firm, his resolve only strengthened by Deneb's revelations. "We will not abandon an innocent being to an uncertain fate," he declared. "I propose a compromise. The Endeavour will escort Deneb to a neutral location where she can safely contact her own people and arrange for a proper diplomatic resolution to this conflict." The narrator notes the long, tense silence that followed, the seconds ticking by like hours, as the Arcturian commander considered Jackson's proposal. Finally, grudgingly, the alien leader agreed, recognizing the potential for a major diplomatic incident should he initiate a direct confrontation with the humans. As the transmission ended, and the immediate crisis passed, Deneb turned to face Captain Jackson and his crew, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I cannot thank you enough for your bravery and your principles," she said softly. "In the face of overwhelming odds, you stood up for what is right. You have given me hope that a peaceful resolution to this conflict is possible." The narrator reflects on the significance of this moment, not just for Deneb and the Arcturians, but for humanity as a whole. "This incident," he muses, "marked a turning point in our species' role on the galactic stage. No longer content to be dismissed or bullied by the older, more powerful races, we demonstrated our growing influence and moral authority. We showed that we were ready to stand up for our principles, for compassion, justice, and peace, even in the face of intimidation and threats. And in doing so, we took another step forward in our journey to becoming true galactic citizens." The Endeavour and its crew, had faced their first true test in the depths of space, and they had emerged stronger and more united than ever. But as the narrator notes, their journey was far from over. New challenges and mysteries awaited them in the vast, unexplored reaches of the galaxy, and they would need all their courage, determination, and ingenuity to face what lay ahead. With Deneb safe aboard the Endeavour, Captain Jackson ordered his helmsman to lay in a course for the designated neutral meeting point. As the sleek human vessel sliced through the void, Jackson and his crew made it their top priority to ensure Deneb's comfort and well-being. They provided her with a spacious, well-appointed cabin, complete with all the amenities she might need to feel at home during the journey. The captain even went so far as to arrange for Deneb to establish a secure communication link with her own people, allowing her to update them on her situation and the progress of the peace negotiations. The Arcturian diplomat was deeply touched by the humans' thoughtfulness and generosity, and she made a point of expressing her gratitude to Jackson and his crew at every opportunity. As the Endeavour cruised through the star-strewn expanse of space, Deneb found herself spending more and more time with the human crew, her natural curiosity driving her to learn all she could about their species and their way of life. She listened with rapt attention as they shared stories of Earth's turbulent history, of the wars and conflicts that had nearly torn their world apart before they finally learned to put aside their differences and work together for the greater good. The narrator, watching these interactions unfold, couldn't help but reflect on how far humanity had come since those early, tumultuous days. Our species' resilience and adaptability, he mused, have served us well as we've ventured out into the galaxy. Those same qualities that allowed us to overcome our own internal strife have enabled us to forge alliances with other races and navigate the complex political landscape of the galactic community. But as the Endeavour approached the coordinates of the neutral meeting point, the ship's sensors suddenly blared a warning. An Arcturian battleship, heavily armed and bristling with advanced weaponry, was moving to intercept them, its intentions clearly hostile. The battleship's commander, a grizzled Arcturian with a scar-twisted face, hailed the Endeavour and demanded that they surrender Deneb immediately. "She is a traitor to the Arcturian people," he growled, his voice dripping with menace. "She must be returned to us to face justice for her crimes." Captain Jackson, his instincts telling him that something was amiss, refused to comply with the demand. He insisted on speaking with Arcturian High Command to verify the charges against Deneb, his tone making it clear that he would not simply hand her over without proper cause. The battleship commander, his temper flaring at Jackson's defiance, cut the communication and ordered his crew to target the Endeavour's weapon systems. The human ship was advanced, but it was no match for the raw firepower of an Arcturian warship. As the two vessels faced off in the void, tensions rising by the second, Jackson and his crew realized they were outgunned and outmatched. But despite the odds stacked against them, the humans refused to back down. They would not abandon Deneb to an uncertain fate, not after everything they had been through together. The Endeavour's crew readied their defenses, preparing to fight to the last to protect their Arcturian guest. Just as it seemed that violence was inevitable, a miracle occurred. A fleet of Arcturian diplomatic ships, sleek and gleaming, suddenly dropped out of hyperspace, surrounding the battleship in a dazzling display of technologically advanced maneuvers. The leader of the diplomatic fleet, an aged Arcturian statesman with a wise, craggy face, hailed the rogue warship and demanded an explanation for their actions. The battleship commander, clearly caught off guard by this turn of events, stammered out a response trying to justify his aggressive behavior, but the elder statesman cut him off, his voice ringing with authority as he revealed the truth. Deneb's mission of peace had been fully sanctioned by the Arcturian government, and the commander and his faction had been exposed as rogue elements, working to undermine the peace process for their own selfish gain. Faced with the full weight of his government's condemnation, the battleship commander had no choice but to stand down. He ordered his weapons powered down and his ship to withdraw, his dreams of glory and conquest shattered by the incontrovertible truth of his own treachery. As the immediate crisis passed, the Arcturian diplomat hailed the Endeavour, his face appearing on the bridge view screen. He thanked Captain Jackson and his crew for their bravery, their unwavering commitment to protecting Deneb and the cause of peace, even in the face of overwhelming odds. "Your actions," he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "have shown the galaxy that even a young species like humanity has a vital role to play in shaping our shared future. You have proven yourselves true allies, champions of diplomacy and cooperation in an often fractious universe." The narrator, watching this scene unfold with a sense of pride and wonder, knew that this moment marked a turning point in humanity's relationship with the galactic community. No longer would they be dismissed as primitive upstarts, fumbling their way through the stars. Now they would be seen as valuable partners, as moral leaders willing to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. As the Endeavour resumed its journey, Deneb at its side, the narrator couldn't help but feel a sense of hope for the future. Humanity had taken its first steps onto the galactic stage, and though the path ahead was sure to be filled with challenges and obstacles, they had proven that they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. Together with allies like Deneb and the Arcturian diplomats, they would work to build a brighter tomorrow, a future of peace and prosperity for all the peoples of the galaxy. As the Endeavour and the Arcturian diplomatic fleet made their way towards the Arcturian homeworld, the narrator noted the growing sense of hope and optimism that permeated the ships. The successful resolution of the confrontation with the rogue Arcturian battleship had not only averted a potential disaster, but also demonstrated the strength of the newfound alliance between humans and Arcturians. Captain Jackson and Deneb found themselves spending long hours in each other's company, discussing the challenges that lay ahead and the opportunities for their respective species to learn from one another. The captain was eager to learn more about Arcturian culture and history, while Deneb expressed a deep fascination with humanity's rapid technological and social progress. The narrator reflected on how the bond between the two had grown over the course of their shared ordeal, evolving from a relationship of necessity and circumstance to one of genuine friendship and mutual respect. They had come to embody the potential for a new era of cooperation and understanding between their peoples, a shining example of what could be achieved when differences were set aside in the pursuit of a common goal. As the ships approached the Arcturian homeworld, however, the mood of optimism was shattered by a horrifying sight. The capital city, where the peace negotiations were set to take place, lay in ruins, the once gleaming spires and soaring arches reduced to rubble and ash. Thick columns of smoke rose from the devastation, casting an eerie pall over the surrounding landscape. The Arcturian High Command, their faces grim and voices heavy with sorrow, confirmed their worst fears. The rogue faction, led by the same battleship commander who had confronted the Endeavour, had launched a violent coup, seizing control of key government installations and strategic points throughout the capital. The planet was in chaos, the dream of peace suddenly seeming like a distant and fragile thing. Deneb and Captain Jackson wasted no time in marshalling their forces, determined to restore order and prevent the collapse of the peace process. Alongside the loyal Arcturian troops and a small contingent of the Endeavour's crew, they plunged into the embattled city, facing off against the well-armed and fanatical insurgents who had entrenched themselves in the ruins. The battle was fierce and bloody, the narrow streets and shattered buildings of the capital transformed into a labyrinth of death and destruction. The human and Arcturian forces fought bravely, their shared purpose and determination driving them forward against the relentless onslaught of the enemy. But the cost was high. Many brave Arcturians fell in the brutal close-quarters fighting, their lives given in defense of their world and the hope for peace. The Endeavour's crew, too, suffered grievous losses, with several key members, including the stalwart Commander Lee, making the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. Through the smoke and the chaos, Deneb and Captain Jackson fought side by side, their weapons blazing as they led the charge against the insurgent strongholds. The captain's tactical expertise and the Arcturian diplomat's intimate knowledge of the city's layout proved invaluable, allowing them to outmaneuver and outfight the enemy at every turn. In the end, after days of bitter struggle, the coup was defeated, the surviving insurgents rounded up and brought to justice. But as the dust settled over the ruined capital, the true scale of the loss became clear. The once vibrant city lay in ruins, its streets choked with rubble, and its buildings scarred by the violence that had been unleashed upon it. And the scars ran deeper still. For Deneb, the sight of her beloved homeworld so ravaged was a wound that would take long to heal. And for Captain Jackson and his crew, the empty bunks and haunted eyes of the survivors served as a grim reminder of the price that had been paid for peace. Yet even in the midst of their grief and pain, there was cause for hope. The Arcturian government, though battered and bloodied, remained intact, and the peace process, though stalled, was not lost. The sacrifice and bravery of those who had given their lives in defense of that dream would not be forgotten, their memory serving as a beacon of hope and a call to action for all those who believed in a better future. As the Endeavour prepared to depart for Earth, Deneb and Captain Jackson met one last time, their eyes heavy with the weight of all they had seen and endured. They spoke of the challenges they had faced and the losses they had suffered, but also of the unbreakable bond that had been forged between them in the crucible of war. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.